dear learner on the platform of MOOCs. I am Professor Nafis Ahmad Ansari from Department of Political Science of Aligarh Muslim University. Today we are going to know about the generalist versus specialist controversy. When we try to trace what is the reason and what is the genesis before this controversy, then we find that any nation's administration needs a variety of people to perform its duties. The staff members should possess the abilities, attitudes, and expertise required for administrative tasks. Administration is divided into a vertical and horizontal divisions. The personnel are categorized into horizontal divisions based on their location at either the territorial or regional level. The vertical divisions are defined by the roles or the responsibilities assigned to the staff members or groups inside them. The generalist and the specialized categories are further seen to fall within the vertical divisions. These aren't quite classified in a strict sense. The fundamental components of classification or characterization of the administrative staff in government are functions and duties. The government has two main functional categories, generalist and specialist. They are essentially in helping to formulate and carry out policies as well as advising political executives. Generalist, when we try to understand who are to be known as the generalist, an administrator without any technical or specialized training is called a generalist. A generalist is a person who is a member of both the Indian Administrative Service IAS in India and the British Administrative Service. A journalist applying to the civil service would be completed their education, passed their BA, BSc, BCom, BTech or MBBS is one of the following fields: literature, history, social science, mathematics, physics, biology, commerce, accounting, or a technical field like engineering or medical. In the word of Leonard White, general administration is understood to mean those duties which are concerned with the formulation of policy, with the coordination and improvement of government machinery, and with general management and control of the departments. Planning, organizing, staffing, directing, coordinating, reporting, and budgeting are the administrative procedures that fall under the umbrella form term known as post COB and are hence the responsibility of a generalist administrator. The post-COB task planning, organizing, supervising, directing, coordinating, reporting and budgeting are typically carried out by a journalist. Regardless of the discipline included in their degree, journalist gets admission to the administration based only on their completion of higher education. The fact that they have completed a particular educational level demonstrates minimum mental and intellectual growth. Furthermore, administrative experience or post secondary education has no bearing on the assignment of a journalist public servant in any government agency. For instance, a journalist applicant with experience in business could be assigned to the irrigation department or division. The term journalist has multiple meanings. According to one school of thought, especially the British, a journalist is an amateur administrator with a liberal education enhanced by a certain personal duties, qualities, and characters, poise and leadership, good intuitive judgment, right feelings, and a broad background rather than narrowly specialized knowledge and skills. This individual may have studied classics or linguistics. The second usage defines a journalist as a rank in man corps of highly experienced administrative specialists or career executives available for flexible assignments. It can provide crucial administrative advice, necessary policy support. This definition is very similar to what the Second Hoover Commission of the USA meant by the senior civil service. Another school of thought defines a journalist as someone who completes a greater percentage of administrative work than more than specialized tasks. This school holds that a specialist may become a journalist by performing managerial or administrative tasks outside a more specialized subject or in the higher hierarchies of their functional field. In a strictly negative context, a journalist is neither an expert nor a scientist. Nevertheless, supposed administration is to be recognized as a discipline and a profession along with the fields like law, engineering, or medicine. In that case, the term journalist can be applied on an individual with the title of professional administrator. A journalist with advanced professional training can use the methods and abilities of both a management and a politician. A journalists are trusted to get things done in their capacity as managers, and they are also tasked with the interpreting public opinion in light of the state's intricate social, economic, and even political issues in their capacity as politicians. Now, specialist, whom we called specialist in a specific field, an expert possesses unique knowledge. Therefore, those hired for positions required professional, scientific, technical, or other specialized training are considered as specialists in the government. Such individual includes engineers, scientists, physicians, lawyers, statisticians, economists, and other technical personnel. Specialists are also posted as advisors, special administrative assistants, and researchers to the chief executive, prime minister, chief minister, or city mayor. An institutional specialism or a pre-employment period of techno-professional academic education or pre-entry vocational or occupational training should be the fundamental prerequisite for becoming a specialist. Accordingly, the pursuit of a specialization, steadfast dedications to one's professional purpose and practice and devotions to the field are considered the characteristics of a specialist. Pro-generalist typical see specialist as a specialized, undisciplined experts who approach every problem from a very restricted perspective. Additionally, they lack the comprehensive understanding necessary to grasp the complexities of contemporary administrative and managerial issues, making them unable to occupy senior policy positions. A specialist is an expert who works only in a certain field or department and holds technical positions in the organizational structure. They are assigned the responsibility of giving the journalist administrator technical guidance. Civil personnel classified as a specialist have attained a high level of education and experience in managing particular discipline. They consist of physicians, scientists, engineers, and so on. In administration, journalists are chosen based on their university degree, regardless of their disciplines they studied. In contrast to the specialist, they are chosen based on their attainment of a particular degree or education, which denotes the minimum level of mental and intellectual growth. In administration, journalists are neither selected based on the expertise in a certain field, subject, or area of study, nor their need for additional training or experiences. It is claimed that journalists must specialize in administration as a whole. Difference between journalist and specialist. A person with extensive training in a specific field of human interviewer is called a professional specialist. In contrast, a person both broad education and training who lacks specialized knowledge in any field is called generalist administrator. The tasks performed by these two types of civil personnel are complementary. Nonetheless, disagreements in their professional backgrounds or perceptions of each other's role might lead to confrontations. There are differences between specialist and generalist. While a specialist would have acquired vocational and technical education, journalists with a liberal arts background are chosen among applicants. A lengthy written examination and a personality test are required of the candidate for journalist roles. Specialists are typically chosen based on how well they do in the interview. Specialists are hired and placed in job immediately, while a journalist must go through a lengthy probationary period. Typically, the experts used their expertise to work for their parent company throughout their careers. Conversely, the journalists are called all-rounders and they are virtually never hear of parent departments. The journalists frequently switch between departments, occasionally joining a public company or semi-government organizations. The specialist must accept the finality of the journalist's choices on matters significantly impacting his expertise. Not only are the specialists given less power to make decisions, but they are also given less reputation, status, and pay. The journalists are superior to the specialist as a group. Under such circumstances, a man's specialization automatically places him in a subordinate positions to the journalist, whose unique characteristics is not greater intelligence or experience, but rather a greater ignorance of the subject matter than the specialist in the that subfield. Genesis of this controversy, when we try to trace, we find that the idea of nearness or remoteness from the field of top policy making is the mainly responsible for the origin of generalist and specialist argument in India. It is more post centric than person centric, and the competitions between the two is really over who gets to hold which positions. The true discussions should be developing an equitable, progressive, and goal oriented personal philosophy, or alternatively, creating sufficient staffing strategy. The journalist dominance in Indian administration can be attributed to central historical factors, highlighting the differences between these two staff types. India's public service was essentially closed to the outsider with no literal entry during the British era. It comprised young people who were admitted after taking a competitive exams. The primary features of the ICS, which emerged particularly under the competitive system, was its emphasis on fostering intellectual culture via higher liberal arts education. Not all the public services placed in the same focus on mental development. It was limited to an elite groups. The ICS, which was the apparatus directly involved in the creation and execution of policies as a whole, the fundamental duties of governance necessitating the ability to make independent decisions and possess a strong moral compass. From the district to the national level, there was hierarchical career structure wherein most postings were designated for Indian civil service members. The intelligent amateur theory reigned supreme in the constitution of the journalist services. They persisted even after independence, since it was believed that the outdated system of public services could help stabilize the government and address issues like the integration of princely states, maintaining law and order, and other issues. The concept of All India services evolved with the Indian Administrative Service, replacing the earlier Indian Civil Service. Due to specific historical relevance, the generalist civil servants that was founded in India came to dominate. The result was discontent among the technical and functional services, who likewise desired to be given the authority to make policy. Specialists debate whether journalists are appropriate for any post involving policy making because the modern government's shifting tasks require a level of professionalism that journalists do not possess to the same extent. The government is denied the specialized expertise and professional advice of the specialists by giving all senior administrative posts to the journalist, particularly the IAS. Nonetheless, pro journalists typically contend that their early career field experience at the district and state level aids their decision making ability. However, experts believe that field experience is insufficient to carry out government's numerous obligations, which call for specialized or expertise. A specialist can also obtain this kind of field expertise. Therefore, journalists are not the only ones who can obtain it. For example, a physician employed by a primary health centers encounters various level world issues such as like a district collector might. This forces him or her to gain more technical proficiency and specific administrative skills. The fact that journalists and the specialists are arranged into a different hierarchies in another sources of conflict between them. This results in situations where the specialist professional advice is presented to the journalist for further approval. This is explained by the argument that journalist is more qualified to make the ultimate decision since a specialist often have a biased perspective swayed towards their area of expertise, and because policy making requires considering the big picture, this because experts are being excluded from the critical administrative roles. The Indian Administrative Service enjoys privileged positions in the controversy due to its high salary, better career prospects, and monopoly on top administrative positions such as secretarial posts in government departments. In fact, journalists are even reserved for heads of most executive departments. This is just one more aspect of the controversy. Career wise, an IS member joins the central secretariat occasionally advance to become the secretary of a department or ministry after working for about 10 years in a state administration. These experts believe that despite their significant contribution to the nation's technological growth, their stature and positions within the administrative structures are unjustified. A journalist frequently switches across departments and occasionally joins a public company or semi-government organizations. Nonetheless, the specialist mobility is limited because they can only be promoted or transferred within the same department. The specialists see the journalist frequent movements as a barrier to learning enough about any area of the department's work in depth and sufficiently. The experts believe that this could undermine competent policy making. Many people progressively realize and accept the superficiality of this much discussed polarization between a journalist bureaucrats and especially technocrats. The intelligent amateur hypothesis popular in 19th century but British is thought to be out of date. The advanced the advancement of the science and technology has led to the increase in the complexity of administration. As a result, modern administration needs the skills of both journalists and specialists, and collaborations between the two must be encouraged. Differences between the administrator and the technical personnel exercising administrative functions and or between officials in different grades, and sometimes no cadres are already out of place. According to India's second 5-year plan is mentioned. Even more directly, the fourth 5-year plan commits to changing the administrative structure to allow professional technicians, experts to contribute appropriately to all administrative levels. The Administrative Reform Commission acknowledged that there had been a substantial shift in government operations. A new administrative domains arise. Managing diverse development programs requires many abilities. It seems as though the generalist is still highly relevant. The commission noted that specialists who understand the relevant subject can appropriately fill many positions in the specialized and technical fields. Owing to the growing sophistications of technology, only a lack of opportunities and appropriate career development has prevented the specialist from acquiring the abilities required to occupy higher administrative posts within the secretariat. The commission recommended number 1, adopting a rational pay structure that reflects the actual responsibilities of each job. Number 2, senior management positions to be filled by both generalist and the specialist. Number 3, adopting a rational system of filling policy advisory positions with men who possess the necessary qualifications and competence. And the last, enabling talent in the lower ranks to move up to the higher positions in civil service based on competence and performance. In addition, the Fulton Committee 1968 stated in its report on the restructuring of British civil services, our goal is not to replace administrator with a specialist or vice versa. They ought to be beneficial to each other. Instead, the administrator, knowledgeable and skilled in his field, should have a more productive working relationship with the specialist than in the past, and the service should maximize each individual's contribution. In indisputable that the generalist and the specialist can significantly contribute to their respective functional contexts. It is not desirable or practical to substitute one category for another. In fact, it is unlikely that great things would happen if specialists replaced all generalists. Similarly, generalists cannot replace pure specialists in their positions. For instance, a secretary to a government department cannot assume the duties of the chief of army staff. Therefore, while coexistence between experts and the journalist must be acknowledged as a basic aspects of administrative life, true question is how or what functions the relationship should play in these interactions. Why to bridge the gap between journalists and specialists is very important to discuss. There is recommendations of Administrative Reform Commission. One potential solution to close the gap between journalists and specialists could be to establish any of the following hierarchies. Number 1, separate hierarchy. The system is prevalent in Australia and Sweden with a common wage and more regard experts. Number 2, parallel hierarchy. A specialist collaborates with a journalist in a structure. For instance, a specialist, the Director General, works with a journalist, the Deputy Secretary. Number 3, joint hierarchy. In this case, a permanent secretary who is also a journalist receives joint reports from the specialist and a journalist. Number 4, unified hierarchy. This refers to the amalgamation of the central and all India services into a single unified civil service. For this to happen, a universal standards and uniformity to pay and working conditions must be examined in a shared competitive manner. While no action was taken to establish such a services in India, Pakistan established the Unified Civil Services in 1973, combining all the services and cadre within their respective civil services into a single service. The two most important aspects of administration are the creation and execution of policies. It is impossible to evaluate the contributions of specialists and journalists to this process in tight, waterproof chambers. The current circumstances demand a combination of specialized expertise an in-depth understanding of administrative tasks, and competence in organizing and formulating policies. When we conclude these discussions, we can say that there has long been a debate in civil services between the roles of generalist and specialist civil servants. Generalists have a broad range of knowledge and skills, while specialists are experts in a specific field. This conflict has often resulted in a tension and disagreement between two groups. However, it is time to end this conflict and recognize the value of generalist and specialist civil servants in the public sector. It is clear that both journalists and specialist civil servants have their strengths and play important roles in the public sector. The conflict between the two groups often arises from a lack of understanding and appropriations for each other's contribution. Journalists may feel that specialists are too focused on the area and not open to new ideas, while specialists may see journalists as lacking in depth knowledge and expertise. However, the truth is both journalists and specialist civil servants are necessary for a well-functioning and efficient public sector. It is not a competition between the two, but rather a collaboration. Together, journalists and specialists can complement each other's strengths and weakness, leading to better decision making and policy implementation. Both groups needs to be better understand each other's role and responsibilities to bridge the gap between the journalists and specialist civil servants. This can be achieved through a cross training and job rotations, where journalists can be better understand specialist areas and vice versa. Team building activities and open communications can also help to foster a more collaborative and inclusive work culture. In conclusion, it is time to end the conflict between journalists and specialist civil servants. Both groups bring unique and valuable contributions to the public sector, and their collaboration is crucial for success of any government agency. By recognizing and appreciating the strengths of each group, we can create a more inclusive and efficient public sector that serves the needs of citizens effectively. We can only achieve the common goal of serving the public interest through working together. Thank you.